I was just helping a friend clean out his shed. Now the CIA might have my number. It started as a favor. One of those, sure, why not, things you agree to before you realize it involves tetanus risk. His dad had passed the previous fall, and the house, old, sagging, sun-bleached, had been sitting untouched ever since. The back shed was the final frontier. His words, not mine. We'd already spent the morning hauling out soggy cardboard boxes, dented paint cans, coils of tangled extension cords from a different century. The shed wasn't really a building. It was more like a large wooden sigh held together by rust and mildew. You could smell it before you got within 10 feet. Old oil, wet paper, dust thick enough to qualify as insulation. Inside, it was chaos. Tools on every surface, spider webs like Halloween decorations no one took down, nails sticking out at ankle height. We worked in silence, mostly. Just the occasional grunt or, careful, that board bites. I was yanking out a half-rotten shelf when my foot went soft, just sank an inch into the floor with a muted crunch. I froze. Looked down. The plank had buckled, not broken. I rocked my weight off it, stepped back. This one's gone. He didn't even look. Yeah, that whole corner's trash. If you see something move, it's probably not a rat. Probably. I knelt, peeled the plank back with a crowbar. It split with a sound like peeling an orange, damp and reluctant. The wood gave way to dirt and something else. Just for a second, I thought it was a bottle cap, a weird one. Then I saw the glint. Not shiny, not bright, but unmistakably metallic. I reached in, brushed aside the soil. My fingers closed on something cool, smooth, and heavy. It was a coin, or close to it. Size of a quarter, maybe a little thicker. Dull gold, perfectly round. But there was something wrong. No face, no date, no denomination. The rim was smooth, the surface matte. It didn't reflect light so much as absorb it. I turned it over, then again. Nothing. No way that's real, my buddy said, leaning over my shoulder. Looks like one of those fake doubloons from a novelty shop. But it didn't feel fake. It had weight, presence. I didn't respond, just slipped it into my pocket. All afternoon, I kept touching it, checking to make sure it was still there. I told myself it was probably nothing. A trinket, a souvenir some kid dropped 50 years ago. But I couldn't let it go. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a desk lamp angled low, like I was interrogating the damn thing. I rubbed it clean with a microfiber cloth. No grime came off. It was already clean, impossibly clean. Tried a magnet, nothing. Tapped it against glass, sounded like metal but duller. I even took out my kitchen scale. It was heavier than it looked. I checked every coin site I knew. Rare currency forums, Reddit threads, antique marketplaces. Nothing matched. It was too plain, too perfect. That's when I noticed the edge, the very edge. There was a pattern, not letters, not numbers, just a slight textured ring, almost like tiny diagonal grooves, evenly spaced. And one of them was deeper. I ran my fingernail across it. It clicked, soft, almost inaudible, like something inside shifted. My pulse jumped. I held it to my ear and heard it. A faint, hollow rattle. Something was inside the coin. And suddenly, I wasn't thinking about collectors anymore. I was thinking about secrets, about things meant to stay buried, and why someone had gone to such trouble to hide a message in gold under a floor in a forgotten shed. The next morning, I drove to the one place in town that felt like it might hold answers: Murray's Coin and Curio. The kind of dusty corner shop wedged between a vape store and a dry cleaner. Your time seemed to move slower, and nobody ever changed the window display. The bell over the door let out a tired jingle as I stepped in. The smell hit me first. Old paper, polish, and something faintly metallic, like brass drawer pulls in an attic. Cases lined the walls, filled with things you couldn't quite put a price on. Medals, tokens, pins from World's Fairs, coins from empires long gone. It was the kind of place where everything had a story, and nothing had a barcode. Murray was behind the counter, hunched over a newspaper like it was a sacred text. He looked up, blinked behind thick wire-rimmed glasses, and gave a small nod. His beard was even whiter than I remembered, trimmed but wild at the edges. Corduroy jacket, leather elbows, a faint smell of pipe tobacco, even though I've never seen him light one. "You've got something," he said, like he'd read it in my posture. I slid the coin across the counter without a word. He didn't touch it at first, just looked, eyes narrowing. Then he picked it up with deliberate care, like it might be hot. "You find this at a flea market?" "No," I said. "Under a shed." That got a pause. He held it up to the light, tilted it, turned it in his palm like a magician handling a card. Then he set it down on a soft felt pad, reached into his jacket, and pulled out a loop. He leaned in, close, silence, the hum of a mini fridge in the corner, the creak of the ceiling fan. He pulled back and looked at me. "This isn't a coin." I blinked. "What?" "It's too thick, too clean, no inscriptions, wrong alloy for any modern mint, and there's no oxidation, not even a trace. That's not how metals age." "So what is it?" He paused, then said it, quiet. ... The word hung in the air like smoke. "You're telling me it's a spy thing?" He shrugged, but it was the kind of shrug that carried weight. "Could be. There's a whole world of objects made to look mundane and hide something else. Concealment devices, especially during the Cold War. I've seen hollow bolts, dummy batteries, toothpaste tubes with secret maps inside." He leaned forward. "But gold? That's unusual. Risky. Whoever made this wasn't playing games." Then he gently tapped the coin's edge with a capped pen. Click. We both heard it. He froze, eyes locked on mine. "You didn't hear that, did you?" I did. He nodded slowly, then moved, deliberate, practiced, disappeared into the back and returned with a box, metal, dented, military gray. He set it on the counter and opened it with a soft hiss of the latch. Inside were tools I couldn't name. Calipers no bigger than a matchstick. A jeweler scope, something that looked like a dental pick fused with a flashlight. "You might want to leave this with me overnight." I hesitated. My hand closed around the coin. He didn't press, just waited. Patient, like a librarian with a rare manuscript. And finally, I let go. He wrapped it in cloth, then placed it in a foam-lined compartment with the kind of reverence usually reserved for relics. "I'll call you tomorrow." I left the shop, but I didn't go home. I wandered, drove aimlessly, got a coffee I didn't drink. My mind kept replaying that soft click, the feel of something shifting, the idea that a stranger had once hidden something important inside a golden shell. I tried to imagine who, and why, and what could be so vital that it had to be buried in wood and dirt for decades. That night, I barely slept, and when my phone finally rang the next morning, I didn't even look at the caller ID. I just answered, and Murray's voice was low, urgent. "You need to come down here, now." When I pulled up to the shop, the closed sign was still hanging in the window, but the door was unlocked. Murray was waiting. He looked different. Not shaken exactly, but alert, like someone who'd been up all night trying not to be excited or scared. He didn't offer coffee, didn't make a joke, just waved me over and pulled the coin, no, the device, out from a padded case, now cracked open at the seam. "I didn't force it," he said immediately. "It's designed to open. There's a catch in the ridge. Deliberate, elegant." He turned it delicately, exposing the hollow interior. Inside was, well, that's the thing. It wasn't empty. A wafer, thin, dark, metallic. No wires, but etched with an array of geometric patterns, concentric rings, slotted lines, almost like the grooves of a record but impossibly fine. "Looks like a circuit," I whispered. "Not quite. Too old for modern microtech. Too new for a relic." I ran scans. No signal, no heat. But something's on it. He looked up, his eyes. "I've never seen anything like it. And I've been doing this a long time." He paused, then added, "And I think someone else has seen one." I blinked. "What do you mean?" He reached under the counter and pulled out an envelope. Inside, printouts, old auction records, notes, a letterhead from something called the Montreal Artifact Registry, and a photo. Another coin, identical, open, same circuit. The caption read, "Private sale, origin unverified, final price undisclosed." He pointed at the document with one finger. This one surfaced in 1987, then vanished. The buyer, Swiss, never named. He leaned in, voice low. "You might be holding something from a program no one's supposed to remember." I took the envelope home and laid everything out on my kitchen table. Photos, auction records, notes scribbled in handwriting that didn't belong to Murray. Diagrams of circuitry I couldn't begin to interpret. Every line, every artifact, it all pointed to the same uneasy truth. Someone had made these things on purpose, and they hadn't made many. I spent hours squinting at the photo of the other device, the one from Montreal. It had the same coin-like housing, same circuit wafer, same impossibly smooth bevels along the edge. But this one had a marking, barely visible, a sort of emblem or insignia etched so faintly into the inner rim, you'd need a jeweler's loupe just to catch it. I called Murray. "Can we check mine?" He didn't even hesitate. "Already did." "And?" "There's something, but I can't make it out. You need someone with better equipment." Better equipment. I knew a guy, old college roommate, worked at a place in Boston that serviced high-end optics and occasionally took on side projects for museums. He owed me one. By the next morning, I was on the road. I had the coin device tucked in a box, padded with shirts. The whole drive, my hands wouldn't stop fidgeting. I kept replaying everything in my head. Finding it, Murray's reaction, the socket wafer, the matching Montreal artifact. I hadn't even told my sister, or anyone, because some part of me, deep down, knew this wasn't something you posted online. This wasn't, "Hey, look what I found under a shed." This was bigger. Alex met me outside his lab, squinting in the morning sun. He was wearing a Red Sox cap and a look of immediate skepticism. "You drove all the way here for a weird coin?" I opened the case. 5 seconds later, he wasn't skeptical anymore. He didn't even speak, just ushered me inside, past reception, past a restricted door, into the kind of workroom that smelled like ozone and machine oil. The kind of place where technology went to be dissected. He examined it under a Zeiss stereo microscope, adjusted the lighting, tilted the housing, then whistled. "Dude, what?" "There's an inscription." He pulled the image up on a monitor, and sure enough, there it was. Tiny, almost imperceptible, but unmistakable. 3 letters. Not Latin, not Cyrillic. Something older, something custom. I asked what it meant. He looked at me, eyes suddenly very awake. "I have no idea, and that's what worries me." He printed a high-res composite. It looked like something off the side of an alien satellite. The curves were too deliberate, The angles too smooth for coincidence. There was a mathematical precision that made the hairs on my neck rise. I ran it through a few pattern recognition datasets, Alex muttered, fingers flying over the keyboard. Nothing in modern alphabets, but there's some overlap with pre-modern ciphertexts. Stuff that was hand-coded, not machine-readable. I watched the monitor flicker as programs ran. Scripts compared the pattern to ancient scripts, watermarks, and encryption keys. Nothing matched cleanly. So what is it? Alex leaned back. I don't know, but it's not junk. He hesitated. Do you want me to ask someone? Like who? MIT has a guy in computational semiotics. He works with the intelligence community sometimes. If this is what I think it is. Which is? He looked at me hard. An encoded signature. Not just a label, a signature. Whoever made this wanted it to be traced by the right people. I stared at the screen. What happens if you call him? Alex looked conflicted, then said, let me sit with it. For now, take it back. I packed the device with new care. My hands moved slower. My thoughts were loud. On the drive back, I took the long way. No podcasts, no music, just the low hum of the engine and my own spiraling questions. Why bury it? Why design something so advanced, so deliberate, and then hide it under a collapsing shed in a nowhere town? By the time I pulled into my driveway, I had more questions than answers. And then I saw it. An envelope. No stamp. No return address. Just sitting in my mailbox like it belonged there. I brought it inside. Opened it with shaking hands. Inside, 3 words. We should talk. And a phone number. Montreal area code. I didn't call right away. I just stared at the number. Typed it into Google. Nothing. Reverse lookup. Blank. Burner. Whoever left that envelope knew exactly what they were doing. I waited until after dinner. After the dishes. After the house was quiet. Then I dialed. 1 ring. 2. Then a voice. French accent. Calm, deliberate. You found the Montrose piece. My blood ran cold. He didn't say a coin. He didn't ask what I had. He named it. I don't know what I found, I said. But I think you do. Silence. Then, can you be in Montreal tomorrow? I'm in Massachusetts. Pause. Drive. Do not fly. Bring it. No photos, no copies. Who are you? More silence. Then the line went dead. I didn't sleep that night. I packed a bag, left a note for my sister, nothing detailed, just gone for work, and hit the road before sunrise. The border agent barely glanced at my license. I kept telling myself I was being paranoid. But when I crossed into Quebec and my phone buzzed with a new text from an unknown number, an address in Westmount, no name, I stopped pretending this was normal. The house was a townhouse. Brownstone, 3 stories, wrought iron gate. Quiet street. Too quiet. I knocked once. The man who opened the door looked like he hadn't aged in 20 years. Trim. Silver hair, black turtleneck. Eyes like flint. He didn't introduce himself. He just said, "May I see it?" I handed over the case. He walked into another room. I followed. The space looked like a library and a lab had collided. Shelves of antique books and war memorabilia. And under glass, devices, gadgets, things I didn't have names for. One of them looked like the coin. He placed mine on a velvet pad beside it. "Yours is cleaner," he said. "Never been activated." Activated? He didn't answer. Just flipped open a leather-bound notebook. Inside, sketches, diagrams, dozens of them, all based on the same object. These were commissioned by someone called Brouwer, he said. A technician, Cold War era, Berlin. Rumor was he built concealment devices for courier agents. Only 8 were ever recovered. And you have 2? He smiled faintly. Now I have 3. I said nothing. I wasn't sure if I was being robbed or inducted. He looked up at me, suddenly serious. There's a collectors group. Discreet. International. We don't deal in money, not primarily. What we deal in is legacy, knowledge, pieces of history that governments erase. And you think this coin is one of those pieces? He opened the back of mine, held it to a light. The circuit glinted. We know it is. Then he leaned closer. And we believe your piece may still contain data. Unextracted. I swallowed. What kind of data? He didn't blink. We won't know until we unlock it. He led me deeper into the townhouse. The hallway narrowed. The wallpaper grew older, cracked and faded, like it hadn't been touched since the 60s. At the end of the hall, a thick iron door stood half open, revealing a vault-like chamber with insulated walls and a humming filtration system overhead. This is where we test, he said simply. He motioned for me to enter. I stepped inside. The floor was cold, polished cement. The only furniture, a long metal table under surgical lights and an old-school oscilloscope rigged to a newer digital console. He set the coin down, centered it, and nodded to a woman already in the room. She wore gloves. No words passed between them. She powered up the scanner. A soft electric thrum filled the air. The device began to pulse, soft blue waves echoing across the surface, like heat mirage. On the screen, the waveform spiked, then stabilized. The circuit inside the coin began to glow. I felt it before I saw it. A low vibration in the floor, or in my sea. I wasn't sure. The woman whispered something in French. He translated without looking at me. She said, "It's responding." Then the lights dimmed. On the monitor, lines. Not static, not noise, patterns, stacked like language. Columns of something that looked like writing, but moved as if alive. Each line refracting, like oil on water. "What is that?" I asked. His voice was almost reverent. Encoding, possibly even audiovisual compression, but not digital. Analog storage in a format we've only theorized. I stared at the screen, breath shallow. "And if you decode it?" He didn't answer at first. "Then, we share it, quietly, with those who will understand." He turned to me. "You've brought us something rare, possibly final. Whatever program this came from, it's long buried. But if this contains what we think..." He didn't finish the sentence. Just looked at me with the kind of gravity that makes time feel slower. Then he reached into a drawer and pulled out something that looked like a modified Geiger counter. Except this one hummed, softly, when it got close to the coin. He smiled. "Let's find out what they were hiding. Subscribe, and you'll see what was inside." It didn't take long. Once the scanner locked onto the circuit's signature, the device pinged, a soft tone, like a heartbeat, and the room fell even quieter. The collector, he never gave his name, motioned for the technician to begin extraction. A cable connected the scanner to a nearby terminal, which began rendering slow, stuttering images. Grayscale frames, layered like a photographic negative. The first thing that emerged was a symbol, an eagle clutching lightning bolts. Then a name, Brower, but beneath that, a code, MKC1 Omega. My host exhaled. "I've seen that before," he said, "but only in files from Langley, redacted. This predates all of it. What does it mean?" He didn't answer directly, just kept watching the screen as a schematic appeared, blueprints, wiring patterns, transmission logs, and then something else, a photo. It was grainy, but clearly real. A man in a uniform, not German, American, holding a coin, not unlike mine, but larger. His face partly obscured. The file date, 1963. Location, Zurich. That's when the collector picked up the phone. He didn't dial, just pressed one button. "This is 17, he said quietly. "Confirm Montreux's integrity. We have a signal." I must have looked confused, because he turned to me and said simply, "You just proved something we weren't sure existed." I stood frozen as they pulled more data. Encrypted notes, mission tags, fragments of ciphered audio. My mind couldn't hold it all. I just watched, numb, as history bled out of something no bigger than a poker chip. When it was over, they powered everything down. The hum stopped. The coin, now dim, was returned to its velvet pad. He offered it back to me. I blinked. "You don't want to keep it?" "It's yours," he said. "Always was. You found it. But if you ever change your mind..." He passed me a card. No name, just a symbol and a number. I left before sunset, crossed the border without issue. And for weeks afterward, I barely slept. I'd wake at 3 a.m. and open the drawer where the coin now lived, just to make sure it was still there. Then, one day, a letter arrived from a private foundation. No return address. Inside, a check. I stared at the amount, read it 3 times. 7 figures. No contract, no signature, just a note for services rendered and for keeping history alive. The drive back from Montreal felt like moving through a dream. The world looked the same. Green highway signs, sleepy gas stations, the occasional hawk circling overhead. But nothing in me felt familiar anymore. I didn't stop until I hit my town. Didn't tell anyone where I'd been. For the first week, I barely spoke. I kept to my routines. Coffee in the morning, long walks in the evening. But I was somewhere else in my head. Part of me was still in that vault room, watching history flicker to life from a metal disc, no bigger than a qua. I kept the coin in a small locked drawer, wrapped in a cloth napkin. Not for safety, just to give it a sense of peace. I'd sit beside it sometimes. No music, no distractions, just silence. Like I was waiting for something else to speak. And then the letter came. I opened it over the sink. I still remember the way the check slid out. Clean paper, heavy stock. The numbers didn't look real. I held it under the light, half expecting it to vanish. There was no return address, just the line, for services rendered, and for keeping history alive. I waited a week before depositing it. The teller didn't blink. She just smiled and asked if I wanted a printed balance. I did. I stared at it all the way home. And still, I didn't spend a dime. Not at first. I needed time. Eventually, I did the things people do when money no longer controls them. Paid off the mortgage. Took care of my sister's medical bills. Sent 2 of my nieces to school. No debt, no stress. But more than that, I breathed. For the first time in years, I slept through the night. I stopped grinding my teeth, stopped waiting for the next shoe to drop. And then, just when life started to feel quiet again, it happened. A text, no name, no words, just a pin drop on a map. The place? A remote part of Alaska. I stared at it for a long time. Then I opened the drawer, unwrapped the coin, and placed it in my palm. It was warm. I didn't imagine that. Some stories don't end. They just ripple outward, waiting for the next person to listen.